Hey, footy fans, welcome to the Point of Difference Rugby League podcast. I'm your host, Dave, and today I'm very pleased to say I've got one of the great Broncos legends from the 90s of that amazing Brisbane Broncos dynasty on the show. Also played for Queensland and Australia. It's the one and only Kerrod Walters. How are you, man?
Dave, absolutely fantastic, mate. How about yourself?
Mate, big grin on the old dial here. Massive Broncos fan from the 90s. So cool to have one on the show. I had Peter Ryan on a while back, so I've got
Yeah,
two of yours on now. Pretty happy. Had Campo on as well.
yeah. Campo's an old Broncos man as well. So, yeah, well, actually, Campo's played at a few clubs, but yeah, but he certainly had a good impact at the Broncos. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what have you been up to, man? Where are you living and what are you doing for yourself?
I live on the Sunshine Coast in Canberra. I have a real estate business with my son, Brooke, called Walters Real Estate for obvious reasons. Also, my wife has a clothing business called Sweet Charlotte Studio. So, yeah, we're
Right.
going really good and life's good, mate. Actually, at the moment, I'm actually down the Gold Coast at Broadbeach, just having a bit of a holiday. So, yeah.
Oh, beautiful. I'll be over there literally a week from today. Finally, going on holiday. Can't wait. 2 weeks
Yeah,
in the
on the
Gold
Gold
Coast.
Coast, are you? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Staying at Surfers. Can't wait.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's a good spot. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. So let's rewind the clock back on things. So where did you grow up? What was life like for young Kerrod Walters growing up with four other brothers who all loved
Yeah.
rugby league?
Yeah, we grew up at Ipswich, obviously. Five boys. Lived just down the road from the local rugby league ground, a club called Blavel Swifts, which is a local team in Ipswich. So played for them when I was five. Went from under fives to under 18s for the Blavel Swifts, and then the a team called the Ipswich Jets came into the Queensland Cup, and myself and Alan and my brother Kevy were signed to play with them with coach Tom Rodonigus.
Oh wow.
And then that's sort of how our sort of semi-professional rugby league career started, and then that was in 1986, and then
Yeah.
87 played for them again, and then 1988. That's when the Brisbane Broncos became of age and was lucky enough to be signed by them and play in the first year. But yeah, back to your question, Ipswich was all about sport. Played rugby league in the summer and sorry, rugby league in the winter and cricket in the summer, and obviously
Okay.
dabbled with a bit of baseball as well. So having four brothers, it was all about going to school. As soon as school was finished, home we go. We'd be down the backyard playing cricket and footy till it got dark, and yeah, it was great times.
Oh, man, it's so bad. Like, was it all competitive amongst you boys? Five boys full of testosterone smashing each other in the backyard?
It certainly was. I mean, the halfway line was a concrete path, so there was a fair bit of I don't know if you know what mercurochrome is, but it's like when you get a scratch in your knee, it's like a little red thing, and it's the thing to get rid of. It's like a antiseptic cream. So my mum was a nurse, and she got the mercurochrome out on many occasions. Lots of arguments. There's many a times mum would come in with the hose and put the hose on us to try and cool us down. Cool down, you blokes. Put the hose on us. So yeah, lots of good times and lots of fun times. Yeah.
Absolutely. So obviously three of you went on to play, first grade. But what about your other two brothers? They got graded as well, didn't they?
They did. Both Brett and Andrew were graded with the Brisbane Broncos in 1988. So they played reserve grade that first year with myself. I played mostly reserve grade because Greg Kiheshka was the incumbent Queensland and Australian hooker, so I sort of sat by him for the first year. And Brett and Andrew were both very talented players in their own right. For some reason, they Wayne didn't keep them on after '88. I
Okay.
don't know why, because Brett was a really strong. He was a bit sort of big, strong, sort of fast winger, and Andrew was a talented back rower. But they
Right.
both went back and played for the Ipswich Jets and had good careers there as well. So yeah, but both could have played first grade in the modern era. See, back then it was semi-professional, so you had to work as well. And so it was a bit of Brett was a builder, and Andrew was a worked in the railways as a boiler maker. So it was a little bit different. Yeah.
What about yourself? What did you do for a job back in those days?
I actually worked in the railways as well as an electrician.
Okay.
Spent most of my time sleeping, so I didn't actually continue
Nice.
my career as an electrician. I finished my time. It took me 4.5 years to finish my apprenticeship because obviously footy was a priority then. So I think I finished my apprenticeship in June of 1989, and about a week later I got picked to play State of Origin. So that was it for me. I wasn't going back to being an electrician. I wanted to be a professional rugby league player.
Bloody oath, man, bloody oath. So obviously growing up with four brothers playing league, was that where the initial love for rugby league came from? Like what was it that always kept you coming back for more?
I just think we just love the game because my oldest brother Brett, who was 4 years older than me, we moved to Ipswich from Rockhampton in I think it was 1973, and he went to play under sevens down at Bevel Swifts, and then Stephen followed, and Andrew followed, and Kevin and I obviously we played 2 years in under sevens. We played with an Andrews team, so we just loved the game and we just loved sport. And growing up in a sort of working class town like Ipswich was all about sport and enjoying your times.
Yeah.
And we had some great battles in the backyard. I remember we'd all pretend it was always 3-on-2. We just swap our ankles, obviously 5, and we pretend to be our favourite players at the time. And I think Kevin loved Tommy Rodonigus, Brett loved Bob Fulton, Stephen loved Rod Reddy. I think it's Andrew. He was a Steve Rogers fan, and for some reason I love a guy called Terry Randall, who was from Manly, a back rower, and he was tough and was, I don't know why I wasn't tough, so I just liked Terry Randall, and I loved Manly back then, which is it was great times. I remember when it got dark, we actually had to come in because Stephen was scared of the dark. He didn't want to play in the dark, so Dad felt a bit sorry for him, so he actually put a floodlight in the backyard so we could actually play at night time. And then in them days, you put the nugget under the eyes, and you think you're playing, for Queensland and Australia. It was fantastic times, yeah.
Oh, mate, that's so cool. So, just one last question about your brothers. Like, you had one was a winger, one's a back rower, one's a 5'8", but you and Steve both played hooker. Like, was there any fisticuffs in the backyard over who's the best hooker?
Well, actually, Andrew was a hooker as well, but in under 18s, he actually dislocated his neck, and part of his agreement to go back and play the game, the doctor said he couldn't play hooker. He became a back rower and became a very good back rower. So there were 3 hookers, and I was actually a 5'8", because Kevy was halfback and I was 5'8" all through our junior career. And one particular game, I think it was under 10s or 11s, the hooker couldn't play. So the coach said, "Can you play hooker for this game?" I said, "I did," and I really liked it and played okay. So I became a hooker. So it was just Kevy was halfback and I was hooker. That's how it was from I think under 10s to under 18s, and because it was just sort of worked in well. I was first receiver. I was dummy after he was first receiver, so we used to hog the ball a bit. So I remember one time in under 8s, because we used to hog the ball. The coach put us on the bench for half a game because no one else was getting the ball. So and I actually remember another particular game in under 8s. We were playing. I forget which team it was, but Kevin is actually a sook. I mean, if you watch him in those press conferences, he starts crying all the time. I thought, here we go. Here's the waterworks again. But one particular game, he kept getting penalised for something, and he'd cry every time he got penalised. And the ref said, "Listen, your brother, he's got to stop crying." He said, "He can't keep crying every time I give a penalty away." I said, "Right, Kevin, listen, you can't cry, mate. Just get a penalty, pop it on the chin and move on." He said, right. So 5 minutes later, penalty against Kevy. He starts crying again. The ref sent him off. He said, "I can't. Off you go." So he sent him off for being a sook. So true story. So that's where he gets.
Awesome.
He just hated losing and loves winning. So that's probably what comes back to, yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious, man. So as you said, you got graded for the Broncos in 1988, signing with the club. So what was that journey going like? Because you played for Ipswich as well. What was that journey to getting into the Broncos system?
Well, so in 1987, the 1986, Stephen got graded with the Canberra Raiders. Because there was no Ipswich Jets in 1986, so he went and played down at North in Brisbane, the North Devils, who are a fair club. Well, they were Brisbane Broncos, now they're the Finns. And then in 86, he got graded to go to Canberra, so he went down there. And then 1987, Wayne Bennett became one of the coaches at Canberra. And Wayne coached myself and Kevin in the under 18s. And so he took Kevin down there. He didn't want to take me because he said he didn't want Stephen to play reserve grade behind me. So he didn't take me. That's my story anyway. And so Kevin went down there in 87. And then another story too was in 87, Dennis Fitzgerald, who was the then CEO of the Parramatta Eels, obviously rang Tommy and said, "Look, I'm going to come up and watch Walters and Langer play. I've heard some reports about them. I'm coming to watch them play." So Tommy said, "He's coming to watch you play. Make sure you have a good game." So we played this particular weekend, and we thought we both played pretty good. We thought, and he said, "Yeah, he likes what he saw. He's going to be on the phone. He's going to give you a call with the potential of signing him." I said, "Oh, beauty." So I reckon for a week I sat by the phone because there was no mobiles back then. It was just like landlines, and he didn't ring. So I bet that was the most, not just for me, for Alan Langer. He could have signed Alan Langer. What could that have done for Parramatta in those after 80s? So he didn't ring, and then about 3 months later, the Broncos become of fruition, and John Rebo signed both myself and Alan Lang, and the rest is history for us. Yeah,
Amazing. If they had have signed you guys at Parramatta, because that was kind of when they sort of fell off their perch of being that
they
unbelievable
did.
side of the 80s. You guys
Yeah,
would
they
have
won.
carried them on.
They won 88, I think 81, 82, 83, and 86, and haven't won a
Yeah,
premiership since then. So,
exactly.
I mean, particularly with missing Alf, he's one of the greats of the game. So, yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, we're so happy that we didn't, because obviously the Broncos came in and we forged great careers with the Broncos. Yeah.
Absolutely. So when you look back at your career, just how massive was it, to have that opportunity to play in that inaugural Brisbane Broncos side in
Well,
1988?
it was fantastic, because back then, if you wanted to go and play in the New South Wales Rugby League, you had to go to Sydney. There was no Brisbane team, so
Yeah.
many players before us went down. Obviously, Kevin and Stephen had to go to obviously to Canberra to play in that competition. So we were so lucky that we didn't have to leave where we grew up and where we lived, and play in the elite competition back then. So it was so great, and to play with our initial team was stacked full of Origin superstars. So Lewis Miles, Kinescu, Dowling, Niebling, Scott. They're all Origin legends of the 1980s. So we had a pretty fair team back in 1988. But one thing that which was a bit of a battle for us, was the week in week grind of New South Wales Rugby League, and which is now called the NRL. There was no easy games. You had to play good each week to win your games, and that was different to the Queensland Rugby League, where you had some easier games. So
Yeah.
we won our first 6 games, and we thought, how easy is this? Flogged the reigning premiers Manly in the first game, and then
Yeah.
State of Origin came. We lost. See, back then in State of Origin, you didn't play for your club. So all of those, we had 6 or 7 blokes in Origin, and they couldn't play for your club for those 3 games. So we lost those 3 games, obviously.
Yeah.
And then we sort of struck. Then there was in 1989 there was a tour to New Zealand, which I was lucky enough to go on. So for 6 weeks we had 6 of our best players not playing for the Broncos. So we went from first back to missed the out of the 5. So it was very difficult back then. So yeah.
Oh, amazing, man. So what was that build up like for the very first Broncos match? Against, like you said, you flogged Manly, the current premiers, who
Yeah,
had unbelievably beaten Canberra as well the year before. And then Wayne Bennett's he's building the side. You guys are all in there training. Like, what's the excitement like in the build up for that very first Broncos match?
it was pretty surreal. Like the first day of training, to be surrounded by these Queensland rugby league legends. So I just couldn't believe it that I was playing in the Broncos in the Queensland and New South Wales Rugby League, plus playing with such superstars. So it was really a good learning curve for me to learn from Wally and Gene and Turtle and these sort of players, and to be coached by Wayne Bennett, who didn't have obviously the aura he has now, but still one of the up and coming coaches, and you knew there was something special about it, the way he went about his work and went about his business. So we trained really hard. My goal was to be a better player in '88, and obviously to have a crack at trying to get that first grade spot from Brett Kinescu. So yeah, the first game there's a lot of build up. There was a lot of hype around the town. It was obviously back at Lane Park back then. I played reserve grade that day. I think we won reserve grade, and then obviously it was all about first grade. And see,
Yeah.
back then you had 13 players would play first grade, and the reserves would come from reserve grade. So you'd
Yes.
play reserve grade, and then you sit on the bench for first grade, the NRL. So I played first grade, reserve grade, then sat on the bench. I think I must have played about 5 or 10 minutes that day, because my Broncos number is actually 17. So I was the 17th player to play for the Broncos. So
Right.
I think I played about 5 or 10 minutes that day, just to get obviously just to get a taste of first grade and go from there. So yeah, they flogged Manly. They just were on fire that day, the Broncos. So it was just great to be a part of it. Yeah.
It's kind of like, that was setting you guys up for the history of the Broncos. Like, you've always been a pretty dominant side for years, ever
Well,
since you came into existence.
it was, yeah, and I think the thing we had to learn was that the week to week grind of the NRL. That's what we had to come to terms with, and it wasn't until 1992 that we won our first premiership, which was probably more longer than most people thought it would take us.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was certainly. We'll talk about that, but yeah, that's the thing about it's the week to week grind. You see this year, there's no easy games in the NRL. Every game you have to beat your best to win, otherwise you lose. So and that's probably
Yeah.
come back to the salary cap. Salary cap is really even the competition out, and it's hard to win these days. Win a premiership, let alone win a game. So yeah,
Absolutely. So did you guys actually feel any pressure being the first Queensland side in the New South Wales Rugby League, like stacked with Origin players? Did you actually feel pressure to succeed like straight away?
Oh, I think there was, yeah. Particularly, I know Wayne felt pressure, and the players did because there's a big expectation that to bring a premiership back to Brisbane. So yeah, particularly when we didn't win the first few years, the pressure was building. And I know Wayne
Yeah.
actually in 1991 when we were, I think we lost our last 2 or 3 games and we missed actually back then it was the top five and not a top
Yeah.
eight, and we lost our last game and missed the semis. So
Yeah.
and in 1991 Wayne was going to pull the pin, and he said, "Look, I'm feeling the pressure too much. I think I might pull the pin." And myself and
Really?
Kevy and a couple of other players said, and Alf said, "Mate, you can't do it. We're gonna win this comp. We're going to do it." So the next year we won it. So
That's
I'm
amazing.
sure Wayne was very relieved.
Oh my God, who knew that? It was so
No,
close.
it was
So
he was going to pull the pin. Yeah,
yeah, I think that 91 season, off memory, you missed the playoffs by 1 point, like,
we did.
or
Yeah,
on for and against, or something like that. You were pretty close. So, when you made your first grade debut, how did you find out you were playing? And, what was that excitement level like, or nerves, or what was it all like for you, like running out for the first time?
well, see, back then, even though I did play a sort of few minutes, my actual run on debut was against the Bulldogs
Right.
later that year because Greg Canistri was picked in State of Origin, so he couldn't play
Okay.
for the Broncos. So my debut was against the Bulldogs at Lane Park, and that I was really nervous for that game. Actually, that was
Yeah.
the most nervous I've ever been before a game, more than grand finals, more than State of
Really?
Origin. Yeah, because it was my debut, and it was all I'd ever dreamed was to play in the New South Wales Rugby League, which is now the NRL, and
Yeah.
to get that opportunity to play against the Bulldogs, who were the dominant team in the 80s,
Yeah.
was just surreal. And I actually scored a try and got man
Nice.
of the match, so it was a pretty surreal debut as well. So yeah, I want more of this. So yeah,
Absolutely. Pretty handy debut. Man of the match. Score a try. How
yeah,
good?
yeah, and so I played 5 games that year for the Broncos in the
Yep.
in first grade, and those 5 games were when Greg Kanishki was away on State of Origin duty and Australian duty. So yeah,
Right.
and so back then too, all the contracts were incentive based. So you got so much to play. If you played 5 games, you got a bonus. So which is itching to get them 5 games. So I can get I think it
Absolutely.
was like $5,000, which now
Oh, wow.
to me was a lot of money. So
That's good coin.
and it was funny back then too. The Broncos were the first club to sort of bring in big win bonuses. So the
Yep.
Broncos decided in 1988 that they would pay $1,500 a win for a win and $50 a loss to give a
Wow.
big incentive to win. Whereas most all the city clubs would pay a bigger sign-on fee and a smaller win bonus. So you can imagine that. Well, during a game, you didn't really think about the $1,500. You thought about the win, but after the game, you certainly thought about it. And I can
Yeah.
remember. So back then, if 1 to 13 got the 1,500, and if you got replaced, you would share your $1,500 with the person you replaced.
Oh,
So I'd worked
really?
out, being a very smart mathematician, that it worked out to be $20 a minute. So when Wayne would come down to the trainer and say, put Kerrod on and give him a run and give Greg Canisius a West, I'd be saying, get me on, you're costing me money. It's $20 a minute. So 10 minutes was $200. So I thought, I've got to get on there. So it's amazing how you think, well, back then, $200, it was a lot it was a lot of money for me because I was only 19-year-old kid and just wanted to play
Yeah.
first grade, yeah.
You must shake your head now at some of the money that goes around in rugby league and go, damn it, we were 10 years too late
Yeah,
or
well,
too
it's
early.
the same with the blokes who played in the 70s and 80s. They would have thought the money we were getting was a lot of money as
Yeah.
well. So it's all relative, but
Yeah, I
I
guess.
just loved the game and I would have played for nothing. So yeah,
Exactly.
loved it. Yeah,
Yes. So, like you said, you got those 5 games in 88, but 89 was the year you really made your mark on the competition, especially the Broncos. You won the hooking jersey, the number 9. You took out the Dally M Hooker of the Year, not once, but back to back, 1989 and 90. Just how special was that? When you've beat out guys like Benny Elias, Steve Walters, your brother, Jim
yeah,
Sedaris, Royce Simmons, all these great names in the comp. How special is that?
yeah. That was a great thing. Obviously, I set myself a goal at the end of '88 was to unseat Greg Kineshku as the hooker for the Broncos. So I trained really hard in that pre-season, and that was my goal. And Wayne sat us down and said, "Look, I'm going to it's going to be open slather for the hooking role. Whoever trains the best and plays the best in the trials is going to get the first job. And lucky enough, I was selected in the first game. And I remember I spoke to a couple of season ticket holders who love cricketish. And I said, "Oh, who's this young Walters? He shouldn't be there." And he said, "But you proved us wrong." So I just was hell bent on making my debut. And like I said, I was lucky enough that year to get the first grade job, and then I think 10 games later, I was picked to play State of Origin. So very lucky that year. Yeah,
absolutely. I was about to ask you about that. So yes, you went on to greater heights, playing all 3 games for Queensland in the Origin series, winning the series as well.
yeah,
So like, how incredible was it to run out, playing a State of Origin, surrounded by your likes of Mal Meningas and your legend Alan Langer, Bob Linder, Wally Lewis. Like, I could go on forever. Like, what's that
yeah.
like for the first time?
Well, that team was one of the great. I mean, the team that won the 8 series as well was a phenomenal team. But that '89 team, we won it a whitewash and won most games, all games quite comfortably. By the second game, who Wally Lewis rates is his greatest win for Queensland. I think we won with 12. We had 12 players in the field at the end because we lost four players and 5 players to injury. So we finished the game with only 12 men. So we lost Alan Langer, Melvin Inga, Bob Linder, who was Michael Hancock. They all got injured and couldn't finish the game. So I think they always showed that try that Wally Lewis scored to win the game for us, but they actually scored a try that game as well. So it was great to be a part of that team. And I remember my first game was actually at Lane Park, and in game 1, just it didn't sort of really click in that I was playing Origin until Arthur Beecham was our coach. So I'm sitting in the dressing room. Wally Lewis, Gene Miles, Alan Langer, Melbourne Inga, Paul Borton, Gary Belcher. Just to name a few. I'm sitting there thinking, am I actually playing Origin? Then Arthur Beeson came around and said, "Here you go, son. Here's your first Origin jersey. Go out there and do us proud." And I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it.
Oh wow!
I thought, this is real. And then when you run out on this Lane Park, which is then now Suncorp, it's just unbelievable. The crowd, the noise they make, and how it lifts you. Yeah, and then it's just phenomenal. And there's nothing better than Suncorp State of Origin. Doesn't get any better. Even back at Lane Park back then, it was phenomenal. Couldn't believe, because I remember back in 1980, I was at the first State of Origin game with my brothers, because my eldest brother Brett, he played in the curtain raiser in the under-18s with Alf's brother Kevin.
Oh,
we're all sitting there, so we caught the train down from Ipswich, and my dad, he would come with us, and Mum come with us as well, and Dad was pretty switched on, and because back then you couldn't get a ticket online, you had to line up and get a ticket. The lines were just right; they couldn't. We thought we weren't going to get in, so my father got a pair of pliers and cut a hole in the Hull Street fence, and in we went because we weren't going to miss out. And I'm telling you, the crowd that night was I think it was 40,000. It was probably 45,000 because 5,000 went through that hole in the fence because they didn't want to miss out either. True story. It was just
that's amazing.
Sitting there and watching our brothers play, and then we're in the old outer back then, and then when Arthur Beecham ran out in that led the team out, it was phenomenal. I thought, man, I've got to do this. And 9 years later, I did it. So phenomenal.
Incredible, man. Oh, I love hearing those stories. That's so good. I love the fact you broke it. That's great. So okay, so you're out there, you're playing Origin. We've all seen the big hits, the fights, the thuggery. What is it like being in the middle, playing hooker no less in a State of Origin?
It was different. Well, it was pretty full on back then. There was you could get away a lot more than get away then, but I remember it's funny because I found Origin easier than I did NRL, because you're playing with such great players and they make it easier for you, mate. It's like it's easier to play NRL than it is to play Queensland Cup because you're playing with better players, Right. So I can only imagine when it was same with me, though, when those young kids come in and play in that team with Cameron Smith and Cooper Cronk and Billy Slater and Jonathan Thurston. It would have been easy for them, mate, because they're such great. Let's say easy, but it was easier for them because they're such great players and they make it easier for you. I know that with Wally and Alf and Mel and these players, that I thought I just got to do my job and they'll look after me. That's how it was. We won. First game we won quite comfortably. The second game was that tight game. The third game we won pretty easily. I scored. And actually, the third game it's at Suncorp again, or Lane Park. I scored a try got man of the match and was picked to play for Australia that night. So it was a pretty good night that night as well. Because back then you played the 3 Origin games, and they had a mini sort of Australian tour. We went to New Zealand and actually played a game in Christchurch. We were doing the podcast from.
That's my next question.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I took it away from you. Yeah.
Yeah. So perfect segue onto that. Playing Origin wasn't enough. You got selected for the Kangaroos. You came over to play at QE2 Stadium over here in Christchurch back in those days.
Yeah.
What's it like? Putting on the green and gold, getting your first jersey, running out in the enemy territory against the old foe New Zealand. My home country. What's that like?
That was unbelievable, man. There's a guy back then called Brendan. Brendan
Tudor.
Brendan Tudor. He was
crazy guys. Yeah.
Oh, he was crazy. And he did some damage for us on that tour. But I remember the game at said QE2 Stadium. I think actually Wally bungee jumped off the top of the stadium after the game from memory. Just as a bit of a yeah. I think so. But I remember back then. Obviously, the All Blacks were just so popular in New Zealand back then. I just couldn't believe how popular the All Blacks were. Every kid had an All Blacks jersey on. So rugby league was popular, but nothing like it is now with the Wars and the All Blacks. You could see how every young New Zealand kid wanted to be an All Black back then, and it was just All Blacks jerseys everywhere. But we loved I think we played 4 or 5 games in the tour, 3 Test matches and a couple of midweek games. Yeah, and it was like New Zealand had a good team back then too, and it was pretty full on. And I never forget. Blocker Roach was my one front rower, and Sam Brackett was the other front rower.
Oh wow!
And obviously grew up watching Blocker Roach, and he was pretty physical and pretty. He was like he used to rip in. And I remember when I first met him, and in the first sort of team meeting for this range, he was just sort of quiet. And I thought, hey, this can't be the same Steve Roach that plays for Australia and for New South Wales and for Balmain. I thought, this is crazy. And then obviously we ran onto the field, and then he just the switch just flicked, and he's Blocker. I said, that's the Blocker Roach I know. And he just changed, And then when the game finished, he was just back to normal, friendly, quiet Blocker Roach. It was phenomenal the way that some blokes can switch on and switch off for a game, So
it's crazy.
He was a great player. I see he just got elected into the New South Wales Origin Hall of Fame, which is very well deserved for Blocker. Yeah, phenomenal player. Yeah,
absolutely. He's one of the greats. Because I was born in '84. I'm an '80s baby, but I watched a lot of those Winfield Cup highlights videos I had as a kid. I used to find them all over the place and watch them over and over and over. And Blocker Roach was one of those guys. He was just a fiery character on the field. And he got sent off for bringing the game into disrepute, like patting a ref on the head or something or other, and he did something.
Yeah, he did. He was. He was
always think, wow,
he was very. Blocker just wore his heart in his sleeve, and he once again he hated losing, and he was just a winner, and he was physical, didn't back down from anyone, and he was a typical front row of those times, and would be a really good, really great player in the modern era as well, because he was very skillful as well, so he could offload a ball and a very skillful player.
Absolutely. So getting back to that Kiwis tour, you actually won the series 3-0. Gave my Kiwis a hiding, but you scored a try in one of the games. I think it was the first one at QE2 Stadium, actually.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you enjoy that whole tour? What was the experience? Was there any other great experiences you had on that Kangaroo tour?
We actually played a game in Rotorua, so that was, and I just remember because of the mud baths there, the smell was because of the. Yeah, I couldn't. What's your smell? I'm sorry, but it's because of the hot bars and that. But I really enjoyed New Zealand. It was the first time I've been there, and I loved it. It was really, really good, really great to obviously play for Australia, but to get to experience another culture and I really enjoyed my tour there. Yeah, fantastic.
Oh, brilliant, man. So 1990 rolled around, and a bombshell was dropped on the competition. Wally Lewis has been moved on from the Broncos. Your brother Kevy has been signed from Canberra to play. In 5'8". So just how special was it? Being twins. What's that bond like when you get to play with your twin brother? In first grade for the Brisbane Broncos. So that's pretty special, right?
Yeah, it was great to get him back because obviously Alf and I had formed a good combination in the early years of the Broncos, and obviously Kevin and I played from under 5s to under 18. So we had a really special sort of bond, And to get him back to play at the Broncos was just great. And I just knew he'd be such an asset to our team. And obviously Wayne chose to bring him back and play in 5'8". And to Wally's credit, Wayne spoke to Wally, and Wally said, "Look, get Kevin back, and I'm happy to play lock." Because Wally actually did start his career as a lock, and then was switched to 5'8" in the early '80s. So, and to Wally's credit, he said, "I'm happy for Kevin to come, and if it's better for the team for me to play lock, I'll play lock." So, credit where credit's due, and obviously Kevin formed a phenomenal career at the Broncos with the old Ipswich connection was myself, Alf, and Kevin. Then obviously then it was more sort of in the late '90s when I moved on was obviously Alf and Kevin. They were a phenomenal team together and had a lot of success.
For sure. And the Broncos finished the season in second place on the ladder behind Canberra. So you into the finals for the first time. You're definite contenders for the Premiership. So what were the feelings going into that finals? Was there pressure on you guys? Like, did you feel it to win the competition, especially with Canberra, who were unbelievable?
There was, and the thing we sort of think back now, and we think how tough must it have been for mum and dad to have one son playing for Canberra and two sons playing for the Broncos. Like, who do they support? Like, it must have been so hard.
Absolutely.
And I remember when I first got selected to play Origin, obviously Stephen was playing some good footy for Canberra, and we thought he probably would get selected as a hooker, and he missed out, and I got it. So I was certainly elated for me, and I felt bad for Stephen and mum and dad. Same thing, they must have felt bad for Stephen, but elated for me. So it would have been so hard, and then during game times, it was it would have been tough, and it was amazing to think that the Broncos and the Raiders sort of dominated those '90s. We never ever played in the grand final against each other, so it was probably good in a way that we didn't, because either they would beat us in the semis or we would beat them. So that particular year in 1990, they gave us a bit of a touch up down at the Sydney Football Stadium, because back then all the semi-finals were played in Sydney. There was none of this home ground advantage. It was all
true.
Semi-finals was back then. It was the top five, and all the semi-finals were played down in Sydney. So remember that particular day? Yeah, it was pretty. I was filthy. We got flogged by Canberra, and Steve was giving it to us. So they actually went on to win the comp. Again, they went back to back in 1990. So they were a phenomenal team. So, but it sort of it made you hungry to think, well, we got that close, we got to do it. So
yeah. I think they beat you something like, was it 30-4 or something like that?
It was just one of the days where nothing went right, and everything they did turned to gold. And it was just But see, back then, 30-4 was considered a bit of a hammering, but now it's not, because the game has sort of gone to sort of not a different way, but big scores become pretty common. So back then 30-4 was a shellacking. So
absolutely.
Now it's commonplace, isn't it? So look at the other night, Cronulla and Penrith 42-0. Two top teams. So that's how the game has changed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, speaking of Penrith, you guys actually played them before you went on to play the Raiders in that finals series. And, they were like a real rising power at the time as well. They went on to the grand final, and they actually they beat you as well. So they had some amazing players. You get Mark Guys, Greg Alexander's, Brad Izzard's, Johnny Cartwright.
They did. They were a really phenomenal team. That's all young blokes. Well, Fittler and Mark Guy were all the same age. They were just coming through, and they were wonderful players. And obviously Greg Alexander and John Cartwright, and he said they were a good footy team. And obviously they had success in '91. And then the terrible thing with Greg Alexander's Ben Alexander sort of being killed in a car accident. I really think that had a huge impact on Penrith. And then in '92 they didn't sort of reach the same heights. And as you're probably about to allude, that was when the Broncos came of age in '92. But that was a big impact on them.
Yeah, and that's sort of like when Greg Alexander eventually came over to the Warriors, I think, just to get away from it all and have a bit of a reset. Yeah,
he did. He went to the Warriors in '95, and Mark Guy went to play for the Western Reds. So it had a big impact, and the club sort of just sort of lost its way for a period there. It had a huge impact on the club. I could imagine losing one of your key players and a player that was very close to a lot of your players. It would have been hard to accept and deal with.
I had Steve Price on the show, and like we talked about Sonny Fye when he passed away in 2009, and the Warriors just never recovered that season. Like they finished second last, and that
Yeah.
5 wins. It was just a tough time for the whole club and everyone. Yeah, it's really, really
Well, if
difficult.
it has an effect right across the club, you can imagine, if you drop a little certain percentage in performance and in your attitude, it has a major effect on a result. So there's a saying that the 1%, so if you're down 1%, you lose footy games. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's how tight it is, isn't it? You only have to be slightly off on
Yeah.
game day and the other team will rip you to bits. Yeah.
That's how the game's changed, Dave. I mean, back in our day, you sit down and you get the draw and you think, we'll win that, we'll win that, win that. That'll be a tough one. We'll win that, we'll win. Now the draw is, mate. Every game is in the tipping. It's hard. And how hard is it to
Oh,
tip these days?
tipping's a joke.
It's very, like this is. I think this year it's last year there was a bit of a gap. This
Yeah.
year with the salary cap, well, the salary cap's obviously been in place for a while, but the stronger clubs have dropped a little bit. The Broncos and Penrith and these clubs have lost players, and the clubs who were down the bottom have obviously signed these players, and
Yeah.
they've improved. So it's a tight comp this year. It's going to come down to the last week for a top eight for sure, like it did. It's probably going to be 14 teams vying for that seventh and eighth spots, I reckon. So yeah.
I reckon. That's perfectly what you said is the Bulldogs. I can't bring myself to tip them or bet on them because they've been so horrible for so long,
Yeah,
but they just keep bloody winning and screwing my
they were,
tipping up.
they were good last night again. So I actually
Yeah,
tipped Newcastle to win that game. I thought
so did
losing
I.
three key players, but it was just a shellacking. So but no one would have picked that. I think that, Newcastle would have been favourites to win that game on the betting as well. So yeah, and
Yeah.
was it final? Was it 32-2 final score?
Yeah, they actually gave him a hiding in the
Yeah,
end.
so
Yeah.
that was a so they've certainly improved immensely. The Bulldogs
Yeah.
this year, yeah.
It's great for the Cop to see the Bulldogs starting to come back up because they're one of the great clubs. They've
They are.
yeah,
They're a well supported club, and it's good to see. The I suppose the teams that have a lot of success having a lot of success for a period of time come through. So I mean,
yeah,
obviously, there'd be a lot of people out there hoping for a WAS Premiership in years to come. So they're heading in the right
absolutely.
direction. So the Premierships are so hard to win now.
Yeah,
There's so many variables now, like injuries, and they're hard to win. It's for Penrith to win three, it's phenomenal. So yeah.
it's incredible.
Mm.
So getting back to your Broncos side, in 1991, you started in great fashion, beating eventual premiers Penrith in that preseason Lotto Challenge Cup.
Yeah, well, the first silverware was 1989. We won. See, back then it was called the MCO Cup, or the
Oh,
so
the Enco
it
Cup.
was
I
a
haven't
mid it
heard of
was a
that in
mid
years.
it's a mid season competition. So you played on Wednesday
Right.
nights. Imagine that now having to play two games in a week. Like that's what you did. Like so it was knockout. So we won that in 1989, and then they
Okay.
changed it in 19. They changed it in 1990 to be a pre-season competition because it had too much of an effect
Right.
on the competition. So 1990 they changed it to the Lotto Challenge, and then 91 we actually won it, as you said.
Yes.
Was it Penrith we beat? Was it? I couldn't. Was
Yeah.
it Penrith we
Yeah,
beat?
you
Yeah,
beat Penrith.
yeah. So that we won that, and then we thought this is going to be our year. We thought we had that success in the preseason. Um,
Yeah.
and then back then, so then you played 4 games in the preseason. So it was a knockout. If you won, you keep going, and so. And I think that year we might have played 30 games or something. So yeah, it was a lot of
Yeah.
footy. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you ever like to see a knockout cup like you got the Challenge Cup and all of that in the UK? Would you ever like to see anything like that introduced to the NRL?
Well, I just don't think it's too hard on the players. I just don't think they can do it. I mean, Origin's bad enough, hard enough.
Yeah.
And then the end of season stuff. So it's just I just don't think you can do it as much as good as it'd be. Because the talent is spread across 17 teams now. If you lose a couple of players, it's so hard to win. So
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think even having the Origin games without your players now, it's hard for teams. So because it's so hard to make the eight now because it's so tight.
Yeah.
I could never see the clubs agreeing to that. No. So I think there's enough footy now. So yeah.
Fair play. Yeah, even looking at, I think I read an article this morning. The Cowboys, they're playing the Roosters in Sydney, and they're missing about 7 players or something for
Yeah.
Origin. Like that's doing it pretty tough.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a way that I mean, Origins obviously is the pinnacle of our game, but I just think there's got to be a way that the players are available for every game. You know, it's just
Yeah,
unfair on the clubs. They're paying them big money, and they're losing them to Origin. You know, so the Warriors they're actually pretty lucky because they only got one player involved, haven't they, in
yeah,
Origin?
just Mitch Barnett,
Mitch
and he's no
Barnett.
given
So
to play either.
yeah, so they're pretty lucky. You know, so but most clubs are the Broncos are missing. We're lucky we've got a bye, but there is a game there. But having said that, you've got to play Wednesday, then back up on that weekend. So I think Kev rested them, a lot of them from last year. So it's just hard on the players, mate, to expect
Yeah,
them to play Origin then to back up again. So, but
absolutely.
so it is difficult, but that's it. That's what you do. You know, you just got to get through it. You know, so
Yep. Okay, so we sort of covered 1991, how you guys missed the playoffs. So we'll move on to 1992. Probably one of my favorite seasons ever to as a fan, of highlights, memories. Obviously, the Broncos, you absolutely turned up the heat. You blitzed everybody through the
yeah,
minor premiership race. I think you won it like 6 points clear of the next side. You
yeah,
guys were just so hot. What was the vibe through the club? Obviously, Wayne Bennett stayed on. You convinced him to stay. What
yeah.
was that feeling through the camp?
Yeah, we were confident that year because we just knew that we had in '91 we had some really good young players coming through. Steve Renouf, Julian O'Neill,
Yeah,
Alan Can, these type of players that were just sort of getting established in first grade. We just knew it in '92 they would hit their straps. So yeah, and I think we lost 4 games that year, and probably
oh,
2 of those games would have been during the Origin period. So and we just knew that this was our year because we weren't arrogant. We were just confident in our own ability. We just knew if we went out and played to our potential that we would win. Just simple as that. That's what Wayne focused on that year was to get our performance right because he knew if we were on our game that we were going to be hard to beat. And one of the things that he sort of said to us, he said, every game's all about take away their hope. He said they come to Lane Park or Suncorp to win, hoping to win. He said we just got to take away the hope in the first 20 minutes, and that's what we did. Take away their hope. So
right.
yeah, and then in the semi-finals, see back then it was the top 5. So the minor premiers would not play in the first week; they get a rest, and 2 versus 3 and 4 versus 5.
Right.
And then 4 versus 5 was knockout, and 2 versus 3 went on to play the number 1 team, which was us. So we'd play 2 games in a month because we
Yeah,
missed the first week, and then we beat. I think what have been Canberra won the first week. We beat them and we had another rest, and then we played the grand final. So good in a way, but
you
you think
were.
much footy. But yeah, I think I'd rather be playing week in, week out, But that's how
Okay.
it was back then, and we just were ultra confident we could get the job done, and we were fully fit. There was no injuries, so we were a
Yeah.
full strength Brisbane Broncos team, just ready to have success. Yeah,
All right. Yeah, you took on the Illawarra Steelers who had their first finals appearance in their
yeah,
history. You got it was a solid win, 22-12,
yeah,
and you went straight through to the grand final. So,
yeah,
as you said, you're fresh, you're ready to go, and then you met the
yeah,
Dragons in
yeah,
that amazing grand final. Want to tell us about the build up? Was the
yeah.
team calm? Was there pressure? Were you nervous going into the big dance?
Well, we were nervous, but we were confident. We just knew that if we played well, we'd win, and that was a pretty comforting thing to know. It's different when when you're playing when you're the underdogs. We just knew that if we turned up with that footy team, I mean that footy team was known for its attack, but our defence was
Yes.
really good. People didn't really not realise how good a defensive team we were as well. I mean, we played some great attacking footy. I mean,
Yes,
that
you
try
did.
that Steve Renouf scored in that '92 grand final, that really personified what we're all about. And I often tell young kids or Google Brisbane Broncos '92 Steve Renouf grand final try. That's how you play footy. There's a saying now. It's called eyes up footy. Play what's in front
Yes.
of you, and that's what we did. I mean, I remember. I think Noel Golf for grubbed into the in goal area. Willie Kahn picked it up and beat 3 or 4 blokes and got out a metre from the try line. I've gone to go into dummy half to pass it to someone just to do just a safe hit up, and Kebby's pushed me out of the way because
Yep.
him and Alpha spotted that Steve Renouf could get the ball 1-on-1 with his centre and have space to do his thing, and so long pass Alf, long pass Pearl, step length of the field try, So
Yep.
that's
Folklore.
yeah, and that's how you play. That's how we played that year, the whole year. And that was one of the great grand final tries, and it has been for a long time. So that's what we did. We just played what was in front of us, and we made some mistakes. We weren't focused on our completion rate. We were just focused on if it's on, we're gonna have a go at it.
Yeah.
And you had to back your defence. We knew if we made an error, we could. I think they scored one try right towards the end. So and we blew a couple of tries that day as well. So probably the score line should have been actually more than that, but we were just happy to win. And because I suppose the most satisfying thing to know was that with 5 minutes to go, or 10 minutes, we knew we couldn't get beat. So it was just a really enjoyable last 5 minutes of that game. Yeah. So I think they actually scored in the last 5 minutes. So it was 28-2 or something until I think 5 minutes to go. 28-8 was the final score. So we just knew we were going to win with 15 minutes to go, and it was just so gratifying. I think Wayne made a few replacements to get a few blokes on to give them get them on the field, and it was a really gratifying experience. Yeah, fantastic.
It's one of the great grand finals because it had those special moments in it. And it's funny you mentioned the Kevin pushing you out of that dummy half. I was going to ask you about that. I specifically wrote a question because I've always noticed that you were at dummy half and Kevin like shoves you out the way and he's like fires it out left. And I've always wanted to ask you that. Like, did you notice that it was on?
It was funny because I was at a luncheon a couple of weeks ago with Pearl, and he said, "Did you ever know what was going on there?" I said, "No." I said, Kevin just pushed me out of the way." I said, "I obviously said, I didn't know what was going on." He said, "I just got the ball," and I think Alf said, "It's coming your way, Pearl." And I said, "Oh, okay," because Pearl Stephen Hoof was a wonderful player, and but Kevin we knew him about being lazy, not wanting the ball, and he said he'd tell him, two tackles, well, Pearl, it's coming your way. Get ready, it's coming your way. All right, just be ready. Yep. Okay, I'm tight. You're getting the ball. So because actually we're at a luncheon 2 weeks ago and Pearl and Kevy and Plathie were up on stage talking, and Kevy was talking about that grand final try and about how both Alf and him saw it, and then obviously I had to relate to Pearl because he was, and then obviously Mick Hancock was outside Pearl, and he obviously didn't get the ball because Pearl he only ran as fast as he had to. No one actually knew how fast he was because he just ran as fast as he had to. So that day, I think Ricky Rolfe was chasing him or someone, and he just stayed that metre ahead of him. So he was a wonderful player, Stephen Hoof. Unbelievable. It was an unbelievable try. It's just the way he would just beat players and with his palm and his speed, it was just phenomenal. Yeah. So,
He scored some pretty amazing tries. He got one in, I think it was a Challenge Cup final, playing under Frank Endicott. I caught up with Frank for a cuppa.
Oh, yeah, for Wigan, yeah.
And he scored an amazing, made a bust from his own, like right at the end of the game, to score the try and kick the goal to win by a point or something. Unbelievable.
Yeah. He was wow. I think he scored 142 tries for the Broncos. And I think next best is I think Wendell Saylor. I think it's next best, and because I know that Corey Oates is getting close to coming third on the list, so I think he might have gone past Alf. Because Alf scored a lot of tries for a 7. Yeah, a lot of tries, Alf. We should call him Araldite Alf because he wouldn't pass the ball because Araldite's like glue. He brings the ball and stick to his hands. He wouldn't pass it. He hates it. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
What a player he was, eh? What a player
he got 2 tries in that final. And so did Alan Cann. Alan Cann was unreal.
Well, Alan Cann could have been man of the match, Alf got what's called the Clive Churchill. He got the man of it, so I actually got the Channel 9 man of the match for that game. So I thought, did you watch? Did you think? Did you not see Alan Langer play? And Sterling, he said, "No, we thought you were good, mate." I said, "Oh, I'll take it." So yeah,
cheers.
I thought, what do they come to interview me for? What have I done? I had a pretty fair game, but I thought Alf or Alan Campbell were the best players that day. But because I scored 2 tries. Actually scored one from dummy half. Yeah.
So good, eh? What about I think when Alan Cann scored, you could see the ecstasy on the face of your brother Kevin when he hugs it after scoring, and you just know
we knew that was it. We'd won, Yeah. Yep. So that's what I'm saying. We just knew that was it. They couldn't come back from there. So and it was just we didn't really appreciate what we'd done until we got back to Brisbane. Because back then we flew back straight after the game because it was a day game. Now it's night grand final, so you got to stay the night. We flew back to Brisbane, and the airport was just thousands of people at the airport. And then driving out from the bus from the airport road, there was people lined along the street, clapping us and cheering. So man, we've done something here. We've done something here. And then we went to King George Square in the middle of Brisbane. They had a big thing there for us up on stage, and then back to the Lees Club. There was obviously our training field. They had set up like a truck, which on the back of this big truck, and sitting there, and there was thousands of people there. And I remember that night, or that after that, Elf jumped off and did a bit of crowd surfing. They carried him up the field. I think then Wayne jumped off over he went, and then Big Lazo, he's jumped off, and the crowd's just parted like Moses parting the Red Sea. He's hit the ground, and they weren't checking you, mate. He hit the ground. Oh, it was so funny. And then Elf got back. He got back to the side of the field, but after he did the surfing, and someone had taken his shoes. Someone had sold his shoes. He had no shoes on. So he couldn't get with them. We're going to the Lees Club, obviously, to celebrate, and he couldn't get. So he put his boots on. He put his footy boots on and wore them into the Lees Club for our celebrations. It was actually a good thing for us because Alf was very short. So with his extra height, he could actually see over the bar. So it was actually good for him.
How long did you guys party for? It must have been a hell of a week.
Yeah, it was that actually because not as long as we would like, because that year was a World Cup tour and the World Club Challenge. So a week later, we played the World Club Challenge against Wigan.
And you beat them.
Yeah, well, we partied for, and then we took it serious as we could, because and actually that was a World Cup tour as well. It was a World Cup final in Great Britain. So we had 8 players selected in the 20 to go to the World Cup, and I was obviously myself and Kevy were selected, which was great. And my brother Stephen, who he was actually Australian hooker by then, so he got picked as well. So all 3 of us went on the World Cup tour. So we played. We must have played. We played at Wigan first, and then went and played. I think we did. Yeah, no, we just played the World Cup. I can't remember actually now, because Mum and Dad were on the tour. That was they saw the World Cup final, and then we beat Wigan. Yeah, we must have won the World Cup. That was straight after. That's right. And then we played Wigan after that. So of course the World Cup was played at Wembley Stadium in front of 80,000 people, and I didn't play in the game, but Stephen and Kev did, and Kevy came off the bench. I think Brad Fitt was 5'8". Kevy came off the bench and did that threw that pass to Stephen Renouf, the old famous outball, to win the game from. So it was phenomenal. Then we went to Wigan and beat them and won the World Club Challenge. So it was a pretty special month of footy. Yeah. So yeah, we partied after that. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I bet you did. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you rolled around to 93. Little bit of a premiership hangover, potentially scraping into 5th place on the ladder. So you're still there. But you had to do the impossible and try win the premiership from 5th place on the ladder. Somehow you managed to do it, but talk us through that journey of that 93 season.
So 93 was a pretty tight comp. We were coming second up until the last game. We played St George at home. We left Lane Parker had gone to ANZ Stadium, so I think it was 50,000 there, and we got beat. And so we went from 2nd place to 5th place. That's how tight it was that year. So we had to go from 5th to win it. No one ever had won from 5th. And it's like coming from 8th in the modern game. So the first game we played, I think we beat Manly in the first game. So we beat Manly in the first game. It was sudden death. Then the second game we beat Canberra. Once again, so we Canberra, Brisbane. We beat Canberra.
Yep.
All these games were played in Sydney at the Sydney Football Stadium. And then the third game, we had to beat the Bulldogs. We were getting beat 12-6 at half time, and then we were tied. We were a tied footy team by then, and somehow we managed to win the game. So we beat the Bulldogs, and then obviously we played our St George in the final in '93, and they were favourites, I believe, that year, because we were coming from 5th and we were tied, and they were fresh, and we beat. I think we won 14-6. That was a much tighter game. Our defence, they didn't score a try. They kicked 3 penalty goals. So
really,
hence the famous saying that Al Langer said after the game, have St George scored yet? And that become a bit of a. He said it in jest in a media thing. Just for joking, because Alf was a jokester, and they took offence to that for all St George, which fan, I suppose. But yeah, so it was that back at the least. You get interviewed, and Elf said it in jest. Have St George scored yet? So it become a bit of a famous saying. But yeah, our defence won us that game. That was why I said our defence was so good. It was a really tight game, and 14-6 and grand final back to back. So it was pretty surreal. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Like if you're Brian Smith and the Dragons, you're thinking surely we can take them this year. They've come from
Yeah,
fifth. They must be knackered. We're fresh. They must have been gutted that they
they
couldn't
were
get
gutted.
over
Yeah,
you guys.
yeah. You could see they were after the game. They were shattered. And it was funny because when we got beat by St George in that last game, so a bloke came up to Chris Johns and said, "You blokes are gone. You won't win this." And Johnsy said, "Well, bet we do." And he said, "Well,
Yeah.
put your money where your mouth is." So Johnsy bet $5,000 that we would win the comp that year, which is a fair bit of coin back then. So and Johnsy played out of his skin that final series. And we know why now because he bet $5,000 and I don't know if you saw that at the end of the game how happy Johnsy was in that grand final. He just won
20K up.
20,000 or something. He won because the bloke gave him 4-1, and he won 5,000. He won $20,000. So he was pretty happy. He defended good that game.
He scored
And,
a try as well.
Yeah, he scored. Yeah, because Kevy.
Yeah.
Well, there's another example. That
Exactly.
when you talk about Clive Churchill medalists, how the hell Kevy wasn't the Clive Churchill medalist of that game, I'll never know. It happened twice. It happened in 1991. Bradley Clive was awarded the Clive Churchill Medal, and Roy Simmons should have been the Clive Churchill medalist that year.
Mate, two tries in the grand final.
But it's back then. It was voted on by the immortals of the time who were still alive and living, and in '91 they voted for Brad because Brad was a phenomenal player. And then in '92, for some reason they voted for Brad McKay, and Kevin was by far and away the best. He set up our 2 tries, by far and away the best player in the field, and he missed out. So I'm sure it probably would, to know that you could have had a Clive Churchill medal to you. He won 6 premierships, so he probably should be happy with that. 6 premierships.
Yeah,
so,
pretty happy.
when you think about it, so I often think about that. Like when he finished playing, I thought, for a bloke who was limited ability to win 6 premierships is pretty special, So he just, but yeah, so 6, that's pretty special. 6 premierships. So I was like, I was happy too, but he got 6. So yeah, 1 with Canberra and then 5 with the Broncos. So yeah,
pretty amazing, eh? Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So to fast forward a little bit, 1995 comes around and the ARL's sort of born. The comp spread to 20 teams. We had the Warriors come in, and you got to play in the first match over here in New Zealand against the Wars. And what's the train of thought for the Broncos and yourself personally coming over here to take on the Warriors and 30,000 screaming Kiwis?
Yeah, that was an awesome experience. Though. Like we didn't know what to expect, and we got there, and then I remember when we ran out, and then all the drums were beating, and all of the man, these blokes. It was pretty intimidating, to be honest. Yeah. They ran out from there, sort of where they ran out from. They come through with we thought, geez, these blokes mean business today, and then we were lucky to win that game. I think Alf won. I think it was 25-22 or something, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yep, Alf won you the game for sure.
Alf won the game for us, the money man. We were down and out with about 10 minutes to go, and Alf, I think he scored a try or something and kicked the field, whatever it was. But he won the game for us, and we were lucky enough to get a because the Warriors had a good footy team back then to start. They had a couple of obviously Greg Alexander, and they had a couple of Pommy blokes as well. Forget who was
and Dennis Betts.
Yeah, that's right. And Dennis
played in that game. Yeah,
they had an awesome team, the Warriors that year. I thought that did they make the 8 that year? What I'm just trying to think.
No, they just missed because they against Western Suburbs. They used the 5th replacement by accident. There was a stuff up, and they got docked to those 2 competition points, and that cost them a finals berth. Yeah,
they had an awesome team, and I think they were probably a bit like us in '88. A lot of expectations. A really good footy team, but the week to week. And having to travel for every second game over the city, that's got to be hard. That's hard to adapt to and to cope with. So that would put it hard for them as well, I'd say. Yeah, and that's probably one thing that the Warriors have probably struggled with over the years is that having to travel. It's not just an away game; it's an away game. So good to have teams coming over there, but it's only once a year for that team.
Once.
Whereas with Warriors, it's 12 times a year, so it's difficult. So
yeah. Yeah, Phil Blake, he scored the first try for the Warriors in their history in that game. What are your
Yeah,
memories of playing against the great Phil Blake? He's one of my favourite players of all time.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was. Oh, like I loved him. He played for Manly. He was like just so skillful, fast. He could make a break and go all the way and score. And he just
Yeah.
like his chip and chases the way he
Yeah.
played. He was just one. He's a bit like a Reece Walsh. He was just all about attack. I'll take the options and I'll face the consequences if they don't come off. So he was a
Yeah.
phenomenal footy player, and the amount of tries. If you watch his highlights, really, it's just unbelievable. Phil
It's
Blake's
Ricochet.
phenomenal player. Yeah, yeah, and a great signing for the Warriors. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Super League sort of came around and you announced you were going to the Adelaide Rams. Was this during the Super League like sort of war when it all came in? Would you have gone to the Rams in '96 if
No, I didn't.
the
I
Super
didn't
League
go
went
till
ahead?
nine. Yeah, I didn't go. So we signed for Super League, and obviously with the Broncos. So we decided to stick together as a club. We all signed
Okay.
together and as a club for the Broncos. So and then then obviously Super didn't come in '96. Although he got defeated in or something happened in the courts or something. So in '97 they decided that was going to happen. So. And then in '97, Wayne, because we hadn't sort of won a comp, we won '92, '93, then '94, '95, '96. We obviously made the semis and just didn't
Yeah.
sort of quite get there. We had a lot of young blokes coming through, and we're going through like a sort of a rebuilding stage. And Wayne decided that he said to me, "Look, I think it might be time for us to, I can't guarantee you a spot. You're gonna have to fight for it." And he said, "You're gonna have to." I said, "Oh." I said, "Bugger, this is bullshit. That's not much loyalty." I felt a bit sort of betrayed because I could have gone to Manly in '95. I was offered a
Okay.
contract to go to Manly for the '95 season, and
Oh yeah.
I decided not to go because I wanted to stay loyal to the Broncos and I love the Broncos. So, and then to
Yep.
have him say that to me at the end of '96, I felt a bit. So I said, "Buggy, I'm going to go." So I
Okay.
said, I'll go. I want to release, and I'll go to the Rams. I could
Right.
only go to a Super League club because there's only couldn't go to because it was an ARL club, so I didn't have a contract with them because you signed a contract with Super League, not with a particular
Yes.
club. So
Right.
I had to go to a Super League club. So and that left 9 other clubs, and most of them had pretty good hookers. So I went to the Rams, and I thought it'd be a great challenge. New club, a
Yeah.
new franchise, new um, thing for Adelaide. So yeah, and I really enjoyed my time in Adelaide. It was a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
But sort of looking back, I wish I had stayed and just fought for my spot. So
Yep.
but I didn't. So that's life. I really enjoyed my time in Adelaide. Yeah.
So what was it like playing against like your old club, the Broncos? You had Kevin Campion there as well, didn't you?
Yeah, Campo was there. Yeah, Campo
Yeah.
was there, and Campo was there in 1997. Yeah, so he was, and then he was a good player, and then he was lucky enough the Broncos picked him up. So
Yeah.
I said, "Mate," he said, "What do you reckon?" I said, "Go there, mate. You'll get success
Gotta
there." So
go.
yeah, I said, "Yeah." So yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed Adelaide, but actually our first trial game was against the Broncos up in
True.
Rockhampton. No, I couldn't wait for it. I thought, "Oh, you beauty!" And then we actually beat them. Oh, it was
Really?
so
I didn't
good.
know that.
Oh,
That's so good.
they just didn't turn up. They were there and they just thought they'd just rock up and it'd be easy for them. But we actually played pretty good that day.
Yeah.
And that night we were having a few beers and I always giving it to them.
Yeah,
And
I
then of
bet you were.
course the first game in the Premiership or the Super League was against the Broncos at Huey too, and they beat us 60-6. So, oh, they had their revenge on us, and they give it to me that night. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I actually really enjoyed. But I remember that particular game. Rodrigue was our coach, and
Yeah.
their wingers were Wendell Sailor and Michael DeVere and Darren Lockett was fullback. And we were talking about our game plan, and I said, "Well, we'll kick to Mick DeVere because Mick DeVere was a really good player, but he couldn't cut the ball like Darren Lockyer or Wendell Sailor." And Rod Reddy
Yeah.
said, "No, I think we should kick to Wendell." I said, "Why the hell would you kick to Wendell?" He said, "Because it's a
Why?
challenge." I said, "All right then." And then I reckon Wendell ran about 300 metres that night because every time we kicked to him, he'd run. I remember one time he ran about 90 metres. I'm saying, what are we kicking him for? Oh, I'll never forget it. So, yeah, 6-6. So game plan didn't work.
No,
Yeah,
time for a new coach, new game
yeah,
plan.
yeah.
So,
Anyway, that's life.
I guess so. Did you have a few like regrets not staying with the Broncos? Like you're going from a team that wins pretty much every week to winning like 7 or 8 games over 2 years. That must be
Yeah,
pretty
but
tough.
it was a different challenge. Adelaide, pretty much they didn't bugger all about rugby league. That was an AFL city,
Yeah,
and it was all about Australian rules, which was named back then. So I saw it as a bit of a challenge to try and promote and develop the game. And we had just not say average team, but we had bloke young kids trying to make their name, and blokes who were just looking for an opportunity. So and we had some good wins. We had some big losses as well, but it was just about growing the product in Adelaide and trying to establish a footy team there. So in '97 with the Super League, we had some good wins and we had some big losses, and then '98 it all came back together. It became the Australian Rugby League, it was called back then. It was 20 teams, 12 ARL teams, and 10 Super League teams. So, sorry, 20 teams. Yeah. So, and it was in 1998 the Rams started to get some sort of some support in Adelaide. So people sort of got to know who the Adelaide Rams were, their rugby league, and that was what all about. I remember in '97, you go into the mall and no one knew who you are. Like, you walk into the mall in Brisbane, people come up to you and everything. But they said, where are you blokes from again? We're the Adelaide Rams. Oh, what do you play? Rugby league. Oh, okay, rugby league, right. But by the second year, people started to know who the Rams were. And I remember our crowds in 1998, we averaged 15,000. So,
it's not bad.
yeah, that was better than a lot of the Sydney clubs. So,
That's better than what a lot get now.
yeah, so we played at the Adelaide Oval, which was the Adelaide Oval was very sacred to Adelaide people. So I remember our first game in 1997. We played against I think it was the Perth Reds. We got 27,000 there.
That's
It was,
incredible.
it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. They didn't know what was going on, but they were there supporting us. So we
They're like,
won.
where's the cricket?
Yeah, and I thought this could be a good thing here. But it ended up being like we didn't make we had a losing season, so I suppose you call it. So it became ninth. But the Cowboys come 10th, so at least we didn't come last. So
Yeah.
then '98 was now another learning year, and I decided in '98 that I was going to go to England to finish my career over there. So I went over to England, and then the Rams folded because in '99 that they bring it back to 16 teams, didn't they? So
Yeah. Yeah. So you went to Gateshead, the Super
yeah.
League. What was the reason to go over there as opposed to potentially signing with another NRL club?
Well, there's a good opportunity. There was it was a new club in the Super League. So I just thought once again it'd be an opportunity to go to a new club, try and help grow the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why. And to experience playing over in England to go do some travelling and yeah. So I
Yep.
just thought I signed a 2-year deal, which what suited me. So yeah. So
That's awesome.
Sean McRae was the coach.
Yep.
And the CEO, I'm trying to think the CEO's name, but he was an Aussie fellow as well. And it's sort of a good opportunity, so that's why I did it. Yeah, and
Quite a few
once again,
Aussies in your team as well, I think.
well, it was predominantly Aussies because that's yeah. So that's because it was a new team. So once again he just bring guys that were after an opportunity who were had played first grade and just wanted an opportunity. So we had a good footy team, but once over there it was the same again. There were like 5 or 6 really good teams, and it really dropped off.
Yeah.
And I think then it was a top 5 as well. I think we finished 6th, so we just missed the 5 as well. But the Wiggins and Bradfords and Leeds, they were all good footy teams. They were really good teams actually.
Yeah.
We just missed the 5. I think come 6th though. And actually, yeah. So that particular year, I signed a 2-year deal, but my wife at the time was over in Thailand having on holiday and had a bad accident and had to go back to Australia and I said I've got to go back to look after her. So I came back and then I couldn't had to go there for a month. I said I could just go back to England straight away. So I said we're gonna have to call it a day. So then I sorted that. And then I she was okay, and I said I'm pretty keen to come back and finish the season there. So I went back and finished the season, but on a different contract. And they offered me another contract. I thought it's not worth going back to that. So I actually signed with South Sydney for the 2000 season, yeah. And they got kicked out of the comp in 2000. Yeah. So I thought, then I got to be manager, and I said, you get on to Wayne Bennett so I can come back there. And I got to start at Brisbane in 2000. Yeah, so finished my career.
Back at the old Broncos where it all started, and you did
Yeah.
actually get on the field for one game that year as well.
I did, yeah. So I played against Newcastle, but Wayne said the same thing to myself and Luke Prentice, whoever trains the best in the trials, and we'll get the first job. And I played pretty good in the trials, but I did my ankle. What's called the syndesmosis, and I was
syndesmosis.
Yeah, 6 or 7 weeks. So I missed the first start and was behind the 8 ball. And Luke Prentice played pretty good in the first 6 or 7 weeks, and then it was just hard to get back in. So. And I was, and it took my ankle was still giving me trouble, so I wasn't playing that good in the Queensland Cup. So yeah, it was just a disappointing year altogether. And I retired after that year. It was just a shame. I would love to have gone out with a premiership. It just wasn't to be, mate. So yeah.
So what's it like when you make that call in your head? You're thinking, I'm actually retiring from this great beast called rugby league that I've done for years now. Like, what do you go through as a player adjusting back to normal life?
It's tough, mate, because your career goes so quick. It's over in them. You think, well, I played for 13 years, and I think it was just over like that. You think, what am I going to do now? So
yeah.
And it's over before you realise it. So you just got to plan better for it. I know now in the NRL they have better schooling and better planning for players for life after footy and for life during footy. Make sure they get better educated. They got like a transition from the game. And back then it just wasn't there, And a lot of blokes struggle when you finish playing because you don't earn enough money to retire from the game back then. You got to go back. You go from earning a good living back to earning nothing. Well, not nothing, but to a normal career. So it was a big thing to accept and to get used to. So I actually went and worked in the Broncos development crew, so going out promoting the game and growing it. So I was lucky I was still involved with the club and they had a really good job. But then I know Stephen, my brother, he struggled when he finished. So it takes a long time because you get so used to being a professional athlete, and then all of a sudden it's gone. And a lot of sports people have that same issue. I remember a girl called Vicky Wilson, who was an Australian netballer, very famous.
Yeah. Oh, she used to kill us at the netball.
Yeah. I just thought, what do I do now? You're being told to go here. I remember the Australian basketball that retired recently. He played it in the WNBA in America. She said the same thing. Your timetable, you're told to do this. You be here then, train here. You train here. Here's your meal. All of a sudden it's finished. She said, what do I do now? I've got no skills. I've got no. So it's a lot of sports people find it very difficult when they retire, but they're lucky enough in those sporting fields that they can earn a lot of money and they can retire if they need to. But you're a long time retired, so you've got to do something. So
yeah, man.
Yeah, but you struggle for a period of time to find your feet again. Yeah, for sure. So it's very important that you do some things during your footy career, that you can go straight in when you finish playing. So yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's good that sort of doing that with players these days, making sure they've got some sort of, education up their sleeve while they're playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the average NRL career is 50 games.
Far out. That's not many.
No, that's 2 years. People, I was surprised when I saw that too. I thought, my God, that's only 2 years, So, so you got to make, 2 years isn't very long. So, so you see the Cameron Smiths and that have played 300 something games, but the average player is 50 games is 2 years, and you've got to think that the basic NRL wage is 150 grand. So, I mean, that's a lot of money to the average person, but that by the time you pay tax, you're done in 2 years. So
you can't live off that forever.
No. So that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's a tough environment to be in. So yeah.
Well, I think you've had an unbelievable career, and it was just so awesome to listen to the big highlights of it. And I just want
Yeah.
to finish with a few fun questions. So,
Yep.
who do you think is going to win the NRL in 2024?
Brisbane, mate. I'm a Broncos fan. We're brothers
Of
in
course they
case.
are.
Well, honestly, I think I just think they would have learned from last year. I know they've lost
Yep.
Blagler, Farnworth, and to the Gold Coast, the front row. I'm just trying to remember his name.
Palacia?
Yeah, Palliser, yeah. So, but I just think that the young blokes that have learned from last year, there's some young blokes coming through. I just think that they could potentially be a better footy side this year with Cobbo in the centres
Yeah,
and these young blokes
great.
coming through and learning from last year. I just think it's an opportunity for them to do something this year again. And I just think
Yeah.
they might have the hunger from last year to get them through, but it's going to be hard to win this year for sure.
Yes. Even with Reynolds out, Jock Madden's gone great. He's doing really good
Yeah,
things.
he is, and I think this year when they had a few of those players in those few games they won and they won quite comfortably. So I think that was good for them to
Yeah.
lose some sort of players and know that they can win, like Penrith have done in the last few years when they lose key players, they managed to win games. So even this year,
Yeah.
but it's about being a good defensive team, and they need to defend better. So
Okay, so lock in the Broncos. Right, so what's your favorite TV show or series of all time?
Seinfeld,
Oh, another one. Everyone
I
says
love.
Seinfeld.
Yeah,
You guys love it.
I watched the reruns, and it's just such a funny show. It was a show about nothing, but
Yeah.
God, it was funny. He's actually Jerry Seinfeld is actually touring Australia at the moment, so yeah, I might try and get down and see him. But that was just a
Brilliant.
classic show. So yeah, yep.
Awesome. All right, last question, man. If you could eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One meal. Ooh, oh, I love a good steak. Yeah,
Yeah.
a good rib fillet. Yeah, with
Okay.
mushroom sauce.
Mushroom sauce. How
Yeah,
good. How good.
yeah.
Awesome,
Hey,
man.
I might just sort of tell. It's funny how the game has changed a lot since we played. The game's obviously more professional. I love the game's a fantastic product now. It's so good to watch on TV. When we played, it was a different sort of game, but it's the same thing. You run, you tackle, you pass, but it was semi-professional in my early career. Then it became professional because of Super League, and that's
Yep.
one thing that the modern player can thank. Super League. If it hadn't
Yep.
been for Super League, they wouldn't be getting the money they're getting now. It revolutionised the game. A bit like World Series cricket with Kerry Packer. The modern
Yep.
cricketer can thank what those players went through and what we went through and the game went through because it did polarise the game back in
Yes.
1995. But this is how the game's changed. So when Stephen, my brother, first went to Canberra in 1986, one of his roles was he used to do the prepare the ground at Seaford Oval where they
Yep.
played back then. Now this one particular weekend he wasn't playing. He was out with a bruised toenail. That's how tough Stevie was. So he mowed the grass. It looked fantastic. The lines were straight for once. And he said, "I've done a great job here. I'm going to go back to the Lease Club and have a few beers." So off he goes
Yeah.
to the Lease. 4 or 5 hours later, he decides to drive home. So silly Steve. So he gets in his ute. He gets about 5 minutes down the road and he sees the police. He said, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm in trouble here." So he pulls the ute over and he gets his lawnmower out of the back of his ute and starts mowing this bloke's front yard. Anyway, the bloke who owned the house comes in. What's going on here, mate? He said, "Oh, mate, Steve Walters from the road." He said, "I've had a few beers. I'll just mow your front yard till the police go and I'll be on my way." "Oh, is that right, Steve?" Flicks open the wallet. "I'm the local police sergeant, Steve."
Oh, you're kidding.
And then
Kidding.
he says, "Listen, Steve, when you finish the front, you can do the back as well."
I'm gonna have to
Uh,
ask him about that.
you'll have to ask.
That's
He'll deny it, but it's true. It's true. Yeah,
What
yeah,
a ripper story to finish on. I love it.
yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Point of Difference Rugby League podcast, going back in the day with me. What an absolute privilege and thrill for me to talk to one of the great Brisbane Broncos of the 90s. What a thrill, man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Dave. Go the Bronx.
Full time.